Hello, my name is Joel McLeod.
I'm Roland Tanner.
And welcome to another episode of the 905er Roundup. Just before we get into all the fun tonight, let's just remind our listeners to, if you want to help us keep going, if you want to help support this podcast, please think about giving us a few dollars. Go visit our Buy Me a Coffee account, or better yet, subscribe to us through Patreon. Links are all in the show notes. Every little dollar that you give us helps us keep going and helps us continue to tell the stories and talk about the issues that are important to you here in the 905. So please, once you're finished listening to this podcast, go to the show notes, click on the links, throw us a few dollars. It'll be greatly appreciated by Roland and myself. That being said, on with the show. Roland, what do you have for us?
Well, possibly the third horseman of the apocalypse. I don't know. The signals of the end times are approaching, as the Toronto Sun had an article this week advocating for bike lanes. And I'm kidding. I mean, this is great. I mean, it's good for the Toronto Sun. We don't often get to say that. They had an article on October the 24th about bike lanes integral to global movement away from cars. And yeah, no kidding.
The Toronto Sun, like the
real Toronto Sun.
We can't be any bluer than Tory blue. We can't dig far enough for oil. Toronto Sun said this.
The official nuke and pave newspaper of Ontario. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so surprising, but welcome, and suggests that maybe, I mean, I just picked this up from comments on Twitter by someone who, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, saying, you know, this maybe is the indication that the kind of embracing cycling as a real mass method of getting around is really gaining headway. But, you know, this kind of feeds in just with my own experience at the moment, where I'm all of a sudden cycling a lot more and making use of Hamilton's bike share program, which is awesome, because even though I have a bike of my own, it's currently living on a balcony and somewhat rusty, and I don't want to drag it up and down stairs 5 times a day or even 5 times a week. So jumping on one of Hamilton's bikes is really good, and very efficient and very cheap, and the people who look after the bikes are super friendly, and yeah, it's a good system, and hopefully, I mean, it's definitely one of the advantages of moving to a large city over a medium-sized city, that these kind of developments are a year or so or a couple of years ahead of some of the other municipalities in Ontario. So, you know, living here, I can seriously consider not owning a car. I don't know what decision I'll ultimately make, but right now I can experiment with not having a car.
But isn't that kind of what the future is holding for cities? I mean, we've talked a number of times on the podcast about how the cities in the 905 are growing beyond the commuter suburb idea that they once were, and we're growing into something different. I wouldn't say we're going to like a megalopolis or anything like that, but we're definitely not the quaint, quiet suburb commuter hub that people sometimes, I think some people still think we are.
Yeah, I mean, and absolutely, and I think it's something we should embrace. I mean, I think so often, well, certainly in Burlington, the issue of bike lanes has been highly controversial in recent years. There was an abortive attempt to introduce bike lanes on New Street, which for people who don't live in Burlington is one of the main kind of thoroughfares through the city from downtown to Oakville. And it was just done really badly and really unfortunately, and it created a massive public kickback against it, which partly was because they introduced the bike lanes exactly the same time as the entire road was dug up for about 6 months to a year. I can't remember how long it was.
It was also the issue of there's a perfectly viable bike path that ran parallel to the entire route that a lot of people were saying, why do we need to spend money to cut off road lanes when there's a perfectly good bike path that runs the entire length of the road right next to it, when really all you had to do is just install probably a bit more illumination so it could be used 24/7. And instead there was this whole like, oh, we got to reduce the path down and increase congestion and whatnot, which kind of, I mean, it's one of those situations where it kind of showed the exact wrong solution to a very real problem, which is it showed that there are a lot of cars on the road in the 905, like just not going between, but just in our communities. There's a ton of cars on the road that we're kind of running out of just place to put them. You know, the idea of like a car share or a bike share is a great way to kind of to change that thinking a bit and to reduce the dependency on cars, which I think honestly terrifies a lot of people around the 905.
It does. I mean, it's I mean, as cycling advocates will point out constantly, we all think of Holland and Denmark, or Netherlands and Denmark, sorry, when we think about cycling. And if you go back to the 70s, they had exactly the same level of cycling as the rest of the Western world does. The only difference is that their governments invested for decades and decades in cycling infrastructure, and the end result is massive cycling use as a primary means of getting around, which leads, of course, to lots of other benefits in terms of public health, and on it goes. Environment, obviously.
But, you know, it's kind of coming off of our conversation with Nancy earlier in the week that, you know, we talk about, it comes down to our leadership. Our leadership is kind of all hell-bent on this. We just need to keep expanding. There's no other option but to build another neighborhood, to extend the road a few more kilometers down the road. And, you know, that field can be turned into 20 homes or whatever have you. And this is the problem is that, you know, we were just talking about before we came on the air. If you think about it, the average family has 2 cars to it. So for every home that you're building in the 905, you got to think you're probably adding double the cars to the roadways. We're not building really more commuter routes. We're just building more houses, and all this, like the stuff just it does matter. We keep adding to it, but we don't really have anywhere to put it. Ultimately,
well, and yeah, I mean, Hamilton. Actually, I think Nancy made exactly this point, but it's one I've been familiar with before from other cities in North America. So it happened in Hamilton, happened in Buffalo. You know, it happened. I mean, in the GTA, we don't think of it as Toronto expanding. We think of Mississauga and we think of Brampton and Markham. However, the effect is basically the same. All these cities doubled in size post-war without necessarily seeing a population increase. So certainly Hamilton didn't see a population increase, but it saw a geographical increase of 100%. Same with Buffalo. Yeah, and we know that simultaneously that created huge urban blight, basically, with this kind of what's often called white flight from downtowns into the burbs that literally kind of kills the centers of cities. And we're undoing all that now, and we've learnt the lessons. You know, we've learnt the lessons of the past, hopefully. But of course, with the current provincial government, it's, you know, really the one thing this government has as a kind of guiding principle is build and drive. You know, it's that, you know, our God-given right to have a black Escalade or whatever. It just has to change. I mean, and I don't even think we talk about increasing the number of cyclists and all these things. I don't think we're being revolutionary, and we're not saying, you know, nobody's saying that we don't still need cars. But I mean, again, in Hamilton, there are zip cars now. There are other car sharing initiatives which are incredibly cheap, because I've just been looking at them this week. You can rent a car for a couple of hours for $6. Go and do your groceries with it, return it back, and you're done. Well, and it's cheaper than an Uber.
But think about it. Like, again, the pandemic has shown kind of like how we can get away with this is the increase of delivery services. You know, during the course of the pandemic, everybody was panicking over, oh my gosh, we got to go get groceries. How are we going to get into grocery stores to buy my produce and my meat and veggies and all that stuff? my family has shifted over into ordering online, and we go pick up from the grocery store. Just show up, call in, hey, we're here. Okay, they run out the order to our car. Easy peasy. But we've seen, again, the entrepreneurial spirit has shown that, now these companies are getting into delivery. You pay for your groceries and you get it delivered in a neat crate and neat tote, and you're good to go. Put away your eggs and your bread and milk and all that. The notion of, I need a car because I need to go get groceries. I need to go do this errand. I need to do this. I don't think holds mustard anymore. We are able to get things delivered to our doors that we need. We got it done for 2 years with COVID. We got essentials like groceries delivered. It can be done. And it's like the idea of, we need to build these massive sprawling neighborhoods anymore. We've kind of proven to ourselves that we don't need it. We can get away with it. The question is, do we just continue to go with that and see the possibilities of going down that road? And the fact that we can go greater intensification for neighborhoods, more green space possibly for people to go play and live and all that fun stuff. But we're still able to keep the economy going because, we can get food and goods and all that stuff delivered to our door now and whatnot.
It's actually a related point. It didn't occur to me the other day. It occurred to someone else that I was watching on YouTube. Actually, a British comedian talking about the amount of land that is given over to golf courses in cities. Now, at the moment, these golf courses in Ontario are highly sought after by developers. Again, guess what? Because golf courses are not protected. They're basically they only have to be golf courses. I'm oversimplifying, but as I understand it, they only have to be golf courses for as long as the city has them designated as golf courses, basically, and you can convert that to housing very easily. Whereas almost any other kind of development in built-up areas is grey field sites that have to be redeveloped, that have more legal complexities, or you're dealing with the green belt or whatever. I was thinking that, all these golf courses, it's kind of disgusting how much land we've given to a few rich people to have as parkland, as private parkland, when there's so little public parkland in any city in Ontario. But if you compare it to, say, Paris or London or places like that have these vast inner city parks. But we have an opportunity, if we had any imagination, to say, well, let's have every city in Ontario suddenly have a big new public park that is truly spacious, where you can go and spend the entire weekend hanging out with friends, have a picnic and get away under the trees, so you're not like Spencer Smith Park, which is a great park, or the parks in Hamilton, which, again, nothing against them, but they're not very big. A city should have that kind almost like lungs of the city kind of deal.
Immediately, I'm going to Halifax, Nova Scotia, which, if you haven't been, definitely go visit. But they have a gigantic park called the Commons. It's essentially, as it sounds, a common public area that can be used for concerts and festivals, or just go fly a frisbee, fly a kite, have a picnic, whatever. It's a common area for the city to enjoy, and I agree. Like that would be a fun. I think the possibilities of that tying into a city infrastructure has a lot of perks and a lot of benefits to it. It's just, I guess. Part of it, like what sparked this, was our conversation with Nancy Hurst in our previous episode, where we were talking about this kind of pathological need to just constantly expand. And we've talked about it in previous episodes in Hamilton. Is that Hamilton has a lot to offer. There's a lot of potential there. It's just, for some reason, people are just giving up on certain neighborhoods. Like downtown, there's a ton of just parking lots and buildings that are in vital need of either a complete teardown and rebuild, or massive injection of funds to rebuild and repurpose. But it's not happening because the intention is, we need to build the next neighborhood. And it's like, well, why not build some more livable space in the downtown core, in the east end of Hamilton, and give people a reason to stay there, to live, to thrive, and contribute to the economy in the actual city proper.
And I think it's coming, frankly, because the demand for land is so much that developers aren't going to say, they're not going to ignore an opportunity. And Eastern Hamilton is an opportunity. And I do feel that even in the last 10, 15 years, you're seeing the gems in amongst the parking lots in Hamilton that are starting to grow. So it's almost like they seeded Lock Street and they seeded James Street and they seeded various other places, and they are starting to kind of expand out from those original spots into a broader. But it's taking time. But I mean, I do think, much as we've both been highly critical of the current council and previous councils, we are seeing change underway in Hamilton. That's partly because of the pressure that's coming from Toronto. That and there's so many things, good things happening now, that I think Hamilton's at that turning point and probably past it. With the GO train, having a proper GO train service finally. Isn't it amazing to think that Hamilton didn't have a GO train service for so long? I mean, it's just Absolutely. Like, seriously. The transformation is coming, and the development will come too. Hopefully it's done well and appropriately. I mean, following up from that golf course point I just made about how amazing would it be if we said, rather than a couple of thousand golfers getting these huge areas inside cities to play, I've got nothing against golfers, but there's plenty of golf courses in this world. How about we turn those into public parks? Well, if a city did that right now and said, okay, we've got a municipal golf course, we're going to turn that into Burlington People's Commons or something, to give it a kind of grandiose title, well, that would immediately get appealed to the LPAT, because that would be appealable. And the developers would say, no, you can't turn that into a park because we could be building on it, and it would be appealed. And that, again, everything comes back to that damn organisation and the extent to which the cities need to be able to do some things without having it all appealed constantly. As well, shouldn't we just be building on this? I know I've gone about that point far too many times, but all roads lead to Rome, I guess. Moving on to another subject, you've been looking at something about the current vaccination numbers. Don't around the sound like
I'm a mathematician, because I'm far from it. But we as much as people want to believe we're all out of it, COVID is still a part of our lives. It's that unwelcome guest that just can't seem to get the hint to go away. And I'm beginning to think it never will. But in the Spectator today, Joanna Furketch, journalist, wrote an article titled "Hamilton needs 29,000 more to get COVID shot." And that number is important because that 29,000 gets Hamilton to 90% vaccination. And that's just, right now, that's just the eligible members of the population. That's not everybody of the entire population. That's just the 11 and up, 12 and up crowd. So, and the importance of that is that right now, she reports that Hamilton's at 80.6% as of Monday, which is one of Ontario's lowest rates of COVID vaccination. And this is like fully vaccinated. We're seeing an uptake, but the uptake is decreasing because the majority of these shots are now just the second doses, people following up and getting their full dose. So we're not seeing that remaining 10 to 20% getting their full dose. And that's, I think it's noteworthy because if everybody's eager about the Ford government announcing last week that, oh, hey, we're starting in January, all those vaccine requirements that we thought were gonna be around, nope, they're gone. That COVID vaccine app that we're all sitting there, waiting to download and figuring how to add it to our iPhones and smartphones and whatnot. That's all been that's all pointless. It's all we're throwing it right out the window. And I find it's an issue because I view it as a capitulation to stupidity. Is how I'm gonna phrase it. Is that we know who I know who these remaining 20% are. These 20% at this point, these are the anti-vax, anti-science crowd. That's them. They are They're the ones holding out. But at this point, I got to believe the majority of us have got our shots. We're moving on. We're healthier for it. But that remaining, this isn't the hesitant. This isn't I need to figure it out. This is clearly the majority of these people are the anti-vax, anti-science. These are the people who are shouting outside your hospitals and blocking ERs during the election. And basically, in my opinion, Doug Ford is just capitulating to them. He's saying, "Fine, you guys win. We're not going to."
Yeah,
go ahead, because I'm probably going to say something bad.
Well, I'll say something bad instead. Morons. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, I don't even from an electoral point of view, I don't see the point, because those 20% of people, I'm not aware that are the PPC running in the provincial election. I wasn't aware that they were. Those 20% are going to vote Conservative, by and large. I'll say 15 of the 20%. So those votes are in the bag. So if you're trying to please a contingent because you want to make sure you have them in the next election, don't bother. You've already got them. So what is it? Well, man, what I think it is that the modern Conservative parties in Canada, their rank and file and their elected leaders are the most extreme part of that party. There may be moderate people, and there are many, many, many millions of moderate people who vote Conservative who are not foaming at the mouth idiots, who are smart people in favour of economic probity or whatever.
It is this. We've heard it reported in the press that during this pandemic, Doug Ford had a hard time saying no. He had a hard time when you had backbench MPPs walking into his office saying, "My people don't want lockdowns. My people don't want to deal with restrictions. We don't need a mask mandate. We don't need all this." And that's why you'd hear. I mean, you want to flash back through the pandemic, you'd hear Doug Ford say one thing, and then the science, the doctors, the scientists, the epidemiologists would all say, "No, that's the complete opposite of what we need." And he's, "Oh, okay." And the next, 2 days later, backtrack and reverse it. And the reason, apparently, the reported in the Star and other media, is because Doug Ford has a hard time standing up to certain members of his caucus and saying he wants to be a people pleaser. And the problem is he can't say, "No, the science, suck it up. Stay indoors, wear a goddamn mask. It's going to be okay." Now that we have vaccines and the light's literally there, to tell, this app is exactly what you need. You can have, my wife and I went out for dinner the other night. No, sorry, I went out for a bite to eat, and I sat down to meet with somebody. And we were excited because I got to take out my new QR code, and the hostess got to take out her phone, and she scanned my phone. It was like, "Hey, yay, we're all safe." It was fun. It took a total of 2 seconds, and no, my privacy was not infringed or whatever. I went in, had a beer, met with the person I was meeting with, great conversation, and all's well. But to say, "Okay, we're going to throw that out the window," and I'm like, why? Why? COVID didn't leave; it's still here. And I'm sorry, but every scientist and epidemiologist warns us. The Delta variant was bad, but other variants could exist, and they're going to exist in that 20%. That 20% is where it's going to mutate and germinate, and the risk that we know we're going to pose is that it's going to beat the vaccine. We're going to get something worse that the vaccine doesn't protect us from. And I'm sorry, but your liability to the rest of us is the real issue here.
Yeah, and we've always had diseases, or for hundreds and hundreds of years, we've had diseases that are that are notifiable. In other words, that we if you have rabies, you're not going to be allowed to wander the streets with rabies for any great amount of time. And there are many other diseases that fall into the same category, where they are so contagious or they're so inherently dangerous that you cannot go out with them. So this is nothing new. That public health that the global public health trumps the individual right to freedom sometimes. And yeah, that sucks, but it's a very, very minor inconvenience for the sake of the wider good. I mean, there's no point even arguing these points. We know it. They know it.
Our listeners know it, and it just we can't. I'm kind of past the point of trying to win the argument. The science is on our side. The science works. It's verified. The vaccines are safe. Right now, if you're not going to take the vaccine, you're a liability to the rest of us. So stay out of our way. And the only way to do that is mask mandates and vaccine passports. And the fact that I don't see any reason why, if I'm in that remaining 20% in Hamilton, why would you get your vaccine at this point? Because even if you might have been on the fence, maybe you had a scheduling issue. There's no stress anymore. In January, the provincial government is lifting all the restrictions. You can just, all right, I can go about my business.
So that's 1 in 5 people that you pass on the street and not vaccinated, not including children who are generally not vaccinated either yet. What is it? We're still at 12 years old. I can't remember what the age is, but yeah. So 1 in 5 adults and all children are unvaccinated still. Yeah, I don't get it. And I think the really interesting point that you made about Doug Ford is that he has been throughout his premiership a weak premier. He is vacillating. He is weak. He is led by the last voice that he heard. This is what happens when you have a premier who is not very bright, who is not well educated. I hate the fact that in this modern age, people don't point out the obvious. Doug Ford is not a clever man. He's never shown any interest in learning anything that he doesn't know already because he thinks his gut instinct is all he needs. And he's dead wrong in that. And that's why he's constantly getting into trouble. And we need to say what's true. It's like you actually need our leaders and our politicians to be fairly smart and to be fairly educated and to be fairly competent.
On that note,
the opposition won't point that out.
Go back to day one of the pandemic. Day one, when jurisdictions around the world were first starting to get the wrap their head idea, like we need to close borders, we need to limit travel, we need to cut people off from each other. How do we do this? And at the very beginning, Doug Ford came out and said, "Hey, everybody, go on March break, enjoy your vacation, have fun, come on back, it'll be fine." And then the next day had to go in and reverse that. That's been this government's response all throughout the pandemic. Say one thing, and the scientists and the epidemiologists say that's not what we need. Oh, let's reverse it. We were in the third wave, which was the worst possible situation for us to be in. The numbers were getting out of hand, all because Doug Ford had felt, well, I'm going to lift the restrictions because my gut tells me it's okay. The trend is going down. I'm going to open up the doors and let's go have a party. And to say, hey, go out and enjoy the nightlife. He unleashed the virus on the majority of us in this province. And that was it. And that wasn't a case of, we misread the room. Every epidemiologist, every scientist, every doctor say, no, do not do this. We need to keep going with the restrictions, and we need to keep going until we get down to a certain threshold. Then we can talk about slowly loosening them up. Instead, Doug Ford said, "No, I'm good. I got it. My gut tells me we're right on this," and he was dead wrong. I do not have any confidence.
And the politicians, the politicians as a whole have been wrong throughout this. I mean, I'm thinking back to all the way from about late last September through to May June time. The politicians at every level of government, well, certainly the provincial level and the municipal level, were constantly getting it wrong, or constantly putting pressure on other levels to open things up. We're saying we're safe, we're the exception in terms of municipalities. Yeah. We remember all the discussions we had about Burlington and Halton. Now, they seem to have shut up now. I think maybe they learned their lesson. It's like, okay, maybe we just keep out of this because we're not helping. I hope that's true. It's not just that I'm hoping
that maybe somebody in the halls of power listened to us. We said, like, shut up and let the scientists lead this one. They know, they're the ones who've spent their entire lives running this. And the fact is that the history of this has shown we all wanted to lift restrictions. We all wanted to go into places and have, cheers to our friends, have a meal, all that. And it sucked that we weren't able to. It really did. But instead of coming up with a way to really help people through it, it was just, I don't want to do the hard work. I don't want to help, actually see if I can help you out. I'll just, I'm going to wish for the best and see how it goes. And every time they do it, we end up, the public ends up paying the costs. And that's what I'm worried about in January, is that right now, the provincial government has sent a signal to the remaining 20% in Hamilton. I just checked in Halton. It's about 15% who are unvaccinated. He just sent a message to those remaining people and the rest around the province. Just sit tight. The weather's getting cold, so you can go and sit indoors anyways. But come January, there's not going to be a need for you to worry about this anymore. All of our hard work, we're forgetting about it, and we're going to throw it open. And my question is, what happens if we start seeing an increase in case numbers again, which we did we did see an increase in January. Back in I'm going to say early 2020, start seeing increase in numbers. What if we start tracing it back to restaurants, back to movie theaters, back to gyms and whatnot, like we did see? Are we going to go back into another lockdown? Are we going to shut things down? That's what I don't like. This stuff is so, we're still uncertain with this. There's no plan. Everything is on a whim. Everything is brand new to this government. And that's just, at this point, it's a little unacceptable to still come at this and say, well, we've never been here before. We have no idea what to do. No, not good enough, guys.
And at no point, if you look at the countries who've handled this thing well, New Zealand tends to jump out, and Australia tend to jump out. The two countries, now sure, they've got certain geographic advantages, fine. However, Britain's also an island and hasn't worked for them. Though they treated it extremely seriously from the get-go. They've continued to, now I know New Zealand has changed their policy somewhat of late and whatever. However, half-assing this thing has not worked at any point. Why do you think half-assing it now is going to start working? Restaurants are open now, theatres are open now, things are getting back to normal, and that's great, and we're doing it gradually. What's the big rush to, at the final hurdle, perhaps, assuming we don't get some terrible new strain coming through, say, okay, with those people who just refuse to take it, it's fine, don't worry about it. No, worry about it. Because they've slowed this whole thing down. They've made this thing much more painful. I want to make one point. And this is my last editorial on this subject matter. When you just said that the restaurants are open now, and it's great. They are open now. Theaters are open. We are starting to see a reopening. They're reopened because of the vast majority of us sacrificing so much. We put in the sacrifice. We cut ourselves off from each other. We cut our, the restaurant owners who abided by the lockdown restrictions, who were sacrificing, who really paid the cost of this, who really sacrificed and really stressed out over this. They are the ones who are hurting. And, instead of kind of catering to them, say, let's make sure that you're safe so that you can stay open forever. We're not listening to them. We're not listening to the rest of us. They're listening to this minority of people who are just unwilling to accept science, unwilling to accept reality. And it's just, why? Why are we catering to these people?
I'm baffled by it. But I'm also exhausted by it. We're the ones who are holding this thing up. We're the ones who are pulling through by the skin of our teeth, and we're getting no recognition for the hard work. It's just okay. Well, let's let the.
No, it's almost as if the people making the biggest fuss about not taking vaccines
exactly
are getting the recognition. Oh yeah,
let's hear what you have to say. Let's do what you want to do, because you're the one screaming and blocking ER ambulance bays.
And to me, it speaks of how extreme the conservative movement is, because there is no electoral logic to it. It's like nearly everything that happens in politics is about votes ultimately. That's fair enough. That's how democracy works. I never complain about people doing things for votes. They should be doing things for votes. However, there's no real votes in this. This is purely about catering to an extreme group of people who are not talking any sense.
You know what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm repeating myself now, but I do think it sends a real message about the state of the conservative parties.
Do better,
parties in this country.
That's all I can say. All right, I'm going to leave it at that for this week. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week with another fun episode of the 905er. Thank you very much, everyone, and talk to you next week. That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.